Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News, an Indian perspective on All India Radio. This is Gaurav Sharma, and with me is Renuka, bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment, and more. As the world fights the COVID-19 pandemic, we begin with a message of caution to stay safe and protected by following these three simple steps. Wear a face mask, maintain social distancing, and focus on hand and face hygiene. The headlines. India and Finland reaffirms commitment to work towards multilateralism, rules-based international order and sustainable development. Portugal fully supports India's permanent membership at UN Security Council, says President of the Inter-Parliamentary Union. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson announces his visit to India in April. US says it is against any unilateral attempts to change the status quo in the East China Sea. And in cricket, England chase a target of 157 runs against India in the third T20 at Ahmedabad. Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Tuesday emphasized that both Finland and India believe in a rules-based, transparent, humanitarian and democratic global order. Prime Minister Modi and his Finnish counterpart Sanna Marin discussed the entire gamut of bilateral issues as well as other regional and multilateral issues of mutual interest during the virtual summit. Both leaders reaffirmed their strong commitment to work for multilateralism, a rules-based international order, sustainable development and combating climate change. The two leaders reviewed the ongoing bilateral engagements and expressed their desire to further expand and diversify the relationship across sectors such as trade and investment, innovation and education. Mr. Modi appreciated Finland's leading role in clean and green technologies and noted the potential for Finnish companies to partner with India's drive towards sustainable development. He suggested enhanced cooperation in areas like renewable and bioenergy, sustainability, edutech, pharma and digitization. The leaders exchanged views on regional and global issues including the India-EU partnership, cooperation in the Arctic region, WTO and UN reforms. Both sides noted the potential for India and Finland to cooperate in undertaking developmental activities in Africa. Speaking at the India-Finland Virtual Summit, Mr. Modi said India sent medicines and other essentials to more than 150 countries last year. He highlighted that in recent weeks, more than 58 million doses of Made in India vaccines reached about 70 countries. The Prime Minister said that India has taken care of the needs of the world along with its domestic struggle during the COVID pandemic. He said that both countries have strong cooperation in areas like technology, innovation, clean energy, environment and education. He said initiatives like International Solar Alliance and Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure have been taken to increase the international cooperation. He urged Finland to join both ISA and CDRI, saying these international institutions will benefit from Finland's ability and expertise. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson will visit India at the end of April. Prime Minister Johnson's office has announced that it will be his first major international trip after Britain's exit from the European Union. Mr. Johnson had planned an Indian visit in January as part of efforts to speed up trade talks between the two nations, but was forced to cancel amid a surge in COVID-19 infections in the UK. Meanwhile, Foreign Secretary Harshvardhan Shringla held a comprehensive discussion with the UK Minister of State for Foreign Commonwealth and Development Affairs, Tariq Ahmed, in New Delhi on Monday on issues of bilateral and multilateral cooperation. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar received Mr. Ahmed and discussed the India-UK bilateral ties and global cooperation. The visiting leader also met the Minister of State for Home, G. Kishan Reddy. The Government of India has said that 5 states, Maharashtra, Punjab, Karnataka, Gujarat and Tamil Nadu, continue to report a surge in the COVID daily new cases. The Union Health Ministry said more than 79% of the new cases are reported from these states in the last 24 hours. Maharashtra has reported the highest daily new cases at over 15,000. It is followed by Punjab with 1,818 cases, while Kerala reported over 1,000 new cases. Kerala is reporting a consistently declining trend over the last month. India's total active caseload has reached over 223,000 today. The ministry said Maharashtra, Kerala and Punjab cumulatively account for 76.57% of India's total active cases. The ministry said 16 states and union territories have not reported any COVID-19 deaths in the last 24 hours. The Information Broadcasting Ministry Secretary Amit Khare will hold a meeting tomorrow with senior officers of 12 states and union territories, showing an increase in the new COVID cases to review the communication strategies being followed in these states. Vice President of the Dominican Republic thanked India for the supply of indigenously manufactured COVID-19 vaccines. Raquel Peña, who is also the head of the Health Cabinet of the Caribbean country, thanked the Indian government and its people in a video message. A consignment of made-in-India COVID-19 vaccines was sent to the Dominican Republic under India's Vaccine Maitri program, which reached the Caribbean last month.
As the Vice President of the Dominican Republic and on behalf of our citizens, I would like to send a warm hug to the brotherly people and government of India. We are confident that these acts of cooperation and support will become a significant and historic milestone between our countries. Once again, thank you very much.
Now let's take a look at the coronavirus updates from around the world.
More countries suspended the use of AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccines after concerns over the vaccine causing blood clots. Sweden is pausing vaccinations against COVID-19 using AstraZeneca's vaccine as a precautionary measure, the country's health agency announced on Tuesday. Germany, France and Italy said on Monday that they would temporarily stop administering the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine. A number of countries have temporarily suspended use of the shot over blood clot concerns, but the company and major health agencies maintain it is safe to use. AstraZeneca on Sunday said that a review of its data found no evidence that its vaccine against the coronavirus causes blood clots. The World Health Organization on Friday, citing the European Medicines Agency, said there was no indication that the events of blood clots were caused by the vaccination. Australia, meanwhile, has said that it plans to keep using the AstraZeneca shot against COVID-19. Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga received his first vaccine dose on Tuesday, making him the first Japanese government official to do so publicly. Thailand's Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha also received his first dose on Tuesday. He was inoculated with AstraZeneca vaccine in the country. Meanwhile, COVID vaccinations in Bangladesh crossed 4.58 million, with close to 100,000 people vaccinated in the last 24 hours. In Brazil, President Jair Bolsonaro announced that he would be replacing the health minister again on Monday. Cardiologist Marcelo Queiroga will be appointed in the coming 2 weeks, making him the fourth person to hold the position since the beginning of the pandemic. Anita Anand for World News, All India Radio.
In another development, the European Medicines Agency's EMA has said on Tuesday that there is no indication that AstraZeneca vaccines are the cause of blood clots reported in some shot recipients. EMA Executive Director Emer Cook responded after more than a dozen EU countries suspended the Oxford AstraZeneca coronavirus vaccine amid health concerns. In a statement, the agency said it is still firmly convinced that the benefits of the AstraZeneca outweigh the risks of these side effects. This is All India Radio giving you the news. For quick news updates round the clock, follow us on Twitter at AIR News Alerts.
3 steps to stay protected and stay safe from COVID-19. Wear face mask, 2 gaz ki duri to maintain social distancing, maintain hand and face hygiene.
The United States has affirmed that the Senkaku Islands fall within the U.S.-Japan Treaty of Mutual Cooperation and Security. In a statement from the U.S. State Department, the U.S. has categorically stated that they remain opposed to any unilateral attempts to change the status quo in the East China Sea or undermine Japan's administration of these islands. The Senkaku Islands, or Diaoyu Islands, are a group of uninhabited islands in the East China Sea. The islands are under territorial dispute as both Japan and China claim ownership of these islands. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin held a series of meetings in Tokyo on Tuesday. In a document issued after the meet, the sides expressed concerns over human rights conditions in China, the country's growing maritime assertiveness, and its new Coast Guard law. In a tweet, Mr. Blinken said that the U.S. is committed to deepening U.S.-Japan coordination on global challenges and our shared vision for a free and open Indo-Pacific region. The 4 countries of the Quad Group, India, USA, Australia and Japan, reaffirmed their commitment to an open and free Indo-Pacific in a virtual summit last week. China has said that it will start issuing visas to foreigners who need to travel to China, but only if they have taken a Chinese-made COVID-19 vaccine. Prasar Bharati special correspondent in Beijing reports that the rule, however, will not make it any easier for Indians to get visas since New Delhi has not approved use of China-made vaccines in the country. The Chinese embassy statement did not specify if Beijing is in talks with the New Delhi to make its vaccines available in India. China also does not recognize other COVID-19 vaccines. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Zhao Lijian reports on Monday that foreign vaccine producers could file a request with the relevant Chinese authorities for a decision to consider them for international travel. He said on Tuesday that China is making its own facilitation arrangements for those who have inoculated with China's vaccines. Our Beijing correspondent has filed this report.
China said the new rule is a meaningful attempt to facilitate cross-border travel after massive inoculation, but this raised more practical questions on its utility rather than facilitation, because people in many countries cannot access Chinese jabs due to regulatory issues. It is also not clear whether the new rule applies to students, the largest chunk of Indians, more than 20,000 students who are waiting for China's nod for more than a year to return to their universities. Chinese embassies in many countries which do not use Chinese vaccines have issued such notices but did not specify how residents in those countries can get Chinese jabs or whether China opposed them to recognize Chinese vaccines. Without these clarifications, these announcements rather sound hollow. Anshuman Mishra for World News, All India Radio, Beijing.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his Portuguese counterpart Antonio Luis Santos da Costa on Tuesday reviewed the COVID-19 pandemic situation in the 2 countries. In a telephonic conversation, both the leaders noted the importance of quick and equitable distribution of vaccines for ending of the pandemic. Prime Minister Modi briefed Mr. Costa on India's vaccination drive as well as the support extended by India to more than 70 countries so far. He assured that India would continue supporting the vaccination efforts of other countries to the best of its capacities. The 2 leaders also reviewed bilateral relations and expressed satisfaction at the positive momentum in the India-Portugal partnership in the last few years. They reviewed preparations for the first ever India-EU leaders meeting scheduled to take place under the Portuguese presidency of the EU in Porto in May. Prime Minister Modi appreciated the role being played by Prime Minister Costa for strengthening the India-EU strategic partnership and said that he was looking forward to meeting him in Porto. Duarte Pacheco, president of the Inter-Parliamentary Union IPU, assured India of Portugal's support towards India's permanent membership at the UN Security Council. Addressing Indian parliamentarians in the Central Hall of Parliament on Tuesday, Mr. Pacheco said both India and Portugal share deep relationship based on common grounds of parliamentary democracy. He said that India's commitment towards implementation of sustainable growth models has been exemplary and is now shared by many democratic countries around the world. Mr. Pacheco also added India is, and in all levels from local to national, is looking to be more inclusive with active participation from women and youth. The IPU president said that India, the largest democracy of the world known to respect convictions both political and religious of every person.
India defends democracy, the state of law, the dialogue between people and countries to achieve peace and development to all. India is the largest democracy of the world and in all levels, from local to national, is looking to be more inclusive with more women and young people. And India respects the convictions, political and religious, of each person.
Talking about the global pandemic of COVID-19, Mr. Pacheco thanked Indian leadership for reaching out to many countries across the world, ensuring supply of COVID-related drugs and vaccines. Mr. Pacheco was on a week-long visit to India on the invitation of Parliament of India and witnessed functioning of Rajya Sabha on Monday. Inter-Parliamentarian Union IPU espouses the cause of promoting democracy across the world and take up issues of international importance. India has been an active member of IPU since 1949, with Najma Heptullah and G.S. Dhillon also serving the international body as presiding officers. IPU is one of the oldest and largest international parliamentary bodies consisting of 179 members with its headquarters in Geneva, Switzerland. India has exercised its right of reply against Pakistan at the 46th session of the Human Rights Council. India's representative, Pawan Badhe, called the attention of members of the UNHRC to the instances of human rights violations in the Pakistani province of Balochistan.
Madam President, I am exercising India's right of reply in response to the incessant misuse of this council by Pakistan for its fallacious and malicious propaganda against my country. As highlighted by various SRs and civil society organizations, this council must pay urgent attention to Pakistan's deplorable human rights records and the discriminatory treatment of its ethnic and religious minorities. According to victim groups, tens of thousands of persons have disappeared from Balochistan since the year 2000.
In a strongly worded statement, Mr. Badhe said that Pakistan is held accountable for its human rights violations.
Pakistani journalists not only face threats, but are often kidnapped and tortured for expressing views that differ from the government's narrative. Political and human rights activists continue to be targeted and charged under draconian laws in Pakistan, including under the Anti-Terrorism Act. While Gulalai Ismail, a women human rights defender who campaigned against violence against women and enforced disappearances, were charged with sedition, terrorism and defamation and had to flee from Pakistan, her father, Mohammad Ismail, has been arrested on terror charges recently. Madam President, it is high time that Pakistan, which continues to export terrorism, is held accountable for its state-sponsored and supported grave violation of human rights of its people.
Meanwhile, Foreign Secretary of India, Mr. Harshvardhan Shringla, has said that India desires good neighbourly relations with Pakistan. Speaking at the Ananta Aspen Centre on India's Neighbourhood First policy, he said that India is committed to addressing any issues with Pakistan bilaterally and peacefully. However, Mr. Shringla added that any meaningful dialogue can only be held in a conducive atmosphere, and the onus is on Pakistan to create such an atmosphere. Speaking on India's Vaccine Maitri initiative, the Foreign Secretary described it as neighbourhood first in action, with India using its vaccine manufacturing capacity available for the greater good of mankind at a difficult time. Speaking on the recent developments in Myanmar, Mr. Shringla called it a matter of deep concern. He said that the gains made by Myanmar over the last decades on the path towards democracy should not be undermined. He said India has always been steadfast in its support to the process of democratic transition in Myanmar as a stable democratic federal union. He added that India's developmental and humanitarian efforts in Myanmar were aimed at the socio-economic development of the country. Calling on the international community to act together, he said that India is working in the UN Security Council in a constructive manner to facilitate balanced outcomes that could assist in resolving the situation. This is All India Radio giving you the world news.
Nominations for the 93rd Academy Awards were announced on Monday. A report.
The Best Picture nominees include Mank, starring Academy Award winner Gary Oldman. The film re-evaluates the Hollywood in the 1930s through the eyes of scathing social critic and alcoholic screenwriter of Citizen Kane, played by Gary Oldman, as he races to finish the screenplay. Sound of Metal, starring Riz Ahmed, who plays the role of a drummer who begins to experience a potentially career-ending intermittent hearing loss. Trial of the Chicago 7, starring Sacha Baron Cohen, is another one of the frontrunners for the big prize. Is based in 1968, depicts the protest at the 1968 Democratic National Convention that turned into a violent clash with police and the National Guard. Anita Anand for World News, All India Radio.
Equity benchmarks today fell marginally to close almost flat. The rupee also weakened 7 paise against the US currency. A report from the business world.
Equity benchmarks today ended almost flat, even as the cues from other Asian stocks were positive. The BSE Sensex at Bombay Stock Exchange slipped marginally by 31 points or 0.06% to close at 50,364, while the NSE Nifty at the National Stock Exchange fell marginally by 19 points or 0.13% to settle at 14,910. On the other hand, the broader market at BSE gained, outperforming the Sensex. The BSE Mid-Cap Index rose 0.5% 0.40%, while the BSE Small Cap Index climbed 0.32%. In the Sensex pack, shares of 15 companies gained, while 15 logged losses. In sectoral indices, 11 out of 19 sectors logged losses. In the global equity market, Asian stocks today logged modest gains. China's Shanghai Composite Index surged 0.8% and Hong Kong's Hang Seng and South Korea's Kospi both climbed 0.7%. Japan's Nikkei 225 gained 0.5%, while Singapore's Straits Times ended flat. European stocks were also up in intraday trade. Oil prices today fell, extending declines for a third day. In intraday trade, Brent crude prices were trading around $68 per barrel. Back home, gold prices today fell 30 rupees per 10 grams at multi-commodity exchange for April contracts. Gold futures was at around 44,870 rupees per 10 grams. Silver prices also slipped 360 rupees to around 67,310 rupees per kilogram for March contracts. And at the forex market, the rupee weakened 7 paise to 72 rupees and 55 paise against the US dollar. Lalema Aneja Dang for World News All India Radio.
India's cabinet has approved a bill to set up Development Finance Institution DFI with an initial capital infusion of 20,000 crore rupees. The bill will be tabled in the Parliament during the current budget session. DFI is expected to raise long-term funds for infrastructure development projects in the country. Briefing reporters after the Union Cabinet meeting, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman said the initial grant to the DFI will be 5,000 crore rupees and additional increments of grants will be made within the limit of 5,000 crore rupees.
Today the Cabinet has cleared this bill through which we will have an institutional arrangement which will help in raising long-term funds. The budget provides for the initial amount. I had announced it in the budget saying capital infusion from our side would be about 20,000 crores and initial grant of 5,000 will also be made, and this year itself capital infusion is 20,000 crores.
Ms. Sitharaman said the government is also planning to issue some securities to this institution by which the cost of funding will come down, and this will help DFI leverage initial capital and draw funds from various sources. She said through this the government is expected to raise a considerable amount from the market. The finance minister said the DFI is expected to raise up to 3 lakh crore rupees in the next few years. The institution will also have some tax benefits for a 10-year long period, and the Indian Stamp Act too is being amended. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has said that all banks will not be privatized and assured that wherever it happens, every interest of the employees and staff will be protected. In a reply to a question in media briefing after the cabinet meeting, she emphasized that even those banks which are likely to be privatized, the institutions too will continue to function after privatization, and every interest of the workers will be taken care of, be it salary or pension.
In cricket, England defeated India by 8 wickets in the third T20 match in Ahmedabad tonight. With this victory, the visitors have now taken a 2-1 lead in the 5-match series. Chasing the target of 157 runs set by India, England comfortably made 158 for 2 in 18.2 overs. For the visitors, Jos Buttler was the highest scorer with 83 not out of just 52 balls. Earlier, riding on skipper Virat Kohli's valiant 77 runs of 46 balls, India had scored 156 runs for the loss of 6 wickets in 20 overs. For England, Mark Wood took 3 wickets.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be visiting Bangladesh on 26th of March at the invitation of Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. The 2-day visit is in connection with the commemoration of 3 epochal events, including Mujib Borshu, the birth centenary of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. The other events are 50 years of the establishment of diplomatic ties between India and Bangladesh and 50 years of Bangladesh's War of Liberation. Prime Minister Modi had visited Bangladesh in 2015. During the visit, Prime Minister will attend the National Day program of Bangladesh as the guest of honor. He will also call on Bangladesh President Mohammad Abdul Hamid. Foreign Minister of Bangladesh Dr. A.K. Abdul Momen will call on the Prime Minister. This will be the first visit to a foreign country since the outbreak of the COVID pandemic. This highlights the priority India attaches to Bangladesh.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his Finnish counterpart Sanna Marin held wide-ranging discussions during a virtual summit today. The two Prime Ministers stressed on the warm and friendly ties between India and Finland during more than 7 decades of their diplomatic relations based on shared principles and values of democracy, rule of law and respect for human rights. A joint statement said the leaders exchanged views on the COVID-19 pandemic and emphasized the unprecedented global efforts in speeding up the development and scaling up of manufacturing of COVID-19 vaccines and promoting equitable access to all countries. Prime Minister Modi informed that India has provided 59 million doses to more than 70 countries, including COVAX. Prime Minister Marin stressed that Finland also is a firm supporter of vaccine solidarity, particularly through COVAX. Finland has also invested in research and development of new technologies for COVID-19 vaccines. The two Prime Ministers announced a digital partnership in future ICT, future mobile technologies and digital education. They also announced a high-level dialogue in education between the education ministries of both countries. They also announced a sustainability partnership involving renewable and clean energy, circular economy and sustainable mobility, and noted that green growth is an essential element of bilateral cooperation. Now let us take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. New York Times reports that President Biden's stimulus package includes the largest single infusion of federal aid that public transportation has ever received. The Guardian writes that Lesotho sacks hundreds of striking nurses as doctors warn of dire shortages. The Guardian also carried a report that French MPs approve non-consent law to protect children from sexual abuse. The Sydney Morning Herald writes that Hong Kong authorities have trapped hundreds of residents in a sudden lockdown, triggering concerns about the separation of families as the city attempts to stop a new wave of COVID-19. South China Morning News writes that Britain plans strategic pivot towards Asia and expanded nuclear arsenal in landmark foreign policy review. And the Gulf Times writes that Qatar has announced that 510,000 COVID-19 vaccine doses have been administered since the start of the nationwide COVID vaccination drive. A quick look at the headlines once again. India and Finland reaffirms commitment to work towards multilateralism, rules-based international order and sustainable development. Portugal fully supports India's permanent membership at the UN Security Council, says President of the Inter-Parliamentary Union. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson announces his visit to India in April. US says it is against any unilateral attempts to change the status quo in the East China Sea. And in cricket, England beat India by 8 wickets in the third T20 at Ahmedabad, take a 2-1 lead in the 5-match series. India is celebrating the 151st birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Before we end, let us listen to his favorite bhajan, Vaishnav Jan, by artists from Finland.
Vaishnav Janato Tene Kahiye Pir Parai Jani Re Vaishnav Janato Tene Kahiye Pir Parai Jani Re Para tu
And with that, we end this bulletin. See you at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.